weird movies. Not the ones that are weird for weird's sake, but the ones that are grounded, albeit absurd. Ones that have a solid concept but are truly bizarre. Stuff like Mandy, Titan, Horse Girl, We've Always Lived in the Castle, all of which I recommend watching, by the way. There's something about these avant-garde films that completely transcend the normal world of cinema. It's almost like they're reaching into a well of creativity, like they're pulling from another world, is a concept I was introduced to by David Wojnarowicz's collection of essays, Close to the Knives. Now, while the entire work is beautiful and complex and intimate, this particular section really spoke to me. And this is on page 87, by the way, if you want to read along in his own words, because this is just my interpretation. So David speaks on the world and the other world, and the separation between art and creation, and business, law, power, regulation. Now, while most people would call this the world, where language and roads and machinery exists, David swaps the terms. He calls the other world the place he feels alienated from, as opposed to the world, this unique creationary space where he can grow the boundaries of his imagination. Now, I've kind of drawn up a dumb little Venn diagram that sort of represents this, where normally we live in this intersection being fed most of our ideas and information from the other world, but there still exists this sliver outside of our known existence. Now, this world, this pure force of design, is where most artists get their inspiration. It's where creators blur the line between conceptual visions and reality. It's where artists can blossom and grow. Their ideas are not always good. Even if they're good to you, they'll never be good to someone. That's the dilemma with storytelling. Even if you think your idea is good, you'll always be disappointing a certain audience. Now, my solution to this problem probably won't be what you want to hear, but if you want to make something people will listen to, you'll have to prescribe to the source of your voice. Money, lies, and conflict. Give in, sell out. If you keep making abstract, delusional works, you'll die young under a bridge from a heroin overdose. So take the money and make a dumb movie. Good over evil. Hero over villain. Classic structure and rigid framework comprising meaningless, idiotic, fake stories are the only stories people want, to be honest. Or at least it's what they'll pay for. I've brought with me a device to demonstrate this. I'd like to call it the Consumer Attention Calculator. It's made out of a normal shoebox. So, just to give a quick demonstration, I've got our first two contenders. We've got nuclear testing in the Bikini Atoll versus Star Wars. So, on one hand, we have the government forcibly relocating natives and poisoning their food and water with overwhelming amounts of radiation, as well as destroying much of their land, resulting in the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands of people. So let's just put that here. And on the other hand, we have lightsabers. Well, let's see what the computer gives us. Alright, next up, we have Harry Potter versus the Vietnam War. Now, on one hand, we have the horrors of American warfare on innocent civilians. In fact, over 1 million Vietnamese villagers killed for no reason other than to inflate a number literally referred to as the body count. So we'll put that in there. And on the other side, we have wizards. Good luck. And now it's time for our final matchup. Lord of the Rings versus the Rwandan genocide. We do have ethnic cleansing. 800,000 people murdered on the grounds of race. Only happened about 30 years ago, but still no one really talks about it. We'll put it in. Or elves. Whew. Let's face it, no one wants to see what makes us uncomfortable. We're only human. Our entire lives are dedicated to making ourselves feel happy. Is the emotion the world is built upon. Everyone wants one thing, and it's to be happy. Wealth? It's happiness. Power, love, both happiness. Even psychopaths kill people just to feel some sort of happiness. Satisfaction is the most basic human need and the driving force behind all of our actions. And for an artist, this goes double. Not only is your goal to make yourself happy, but to make others happy as well. Engagement is your drug, attention, your pathway to happiness. The hard part is getting an audience, the easy part is just beginning to create. So, now that we've deconstructed the most important aspects of artistic creation, we can make a simple 5-step guideline for you to follow. Step 1, be weird. No one's gonna wanna watch your content if it isn't original. Step 2, be indulgent. Break through the walls of experience into the world, into abundant expression. Step 3, be a sellout. You'll never get anywhere unless you take the money and run. Weave your own meaning into the meaningless crap that big studios want to push into the mainstream scene, and your audience will thank you for it. Step 4, be fake. The only way to get someone to listen to you is to put a bottle in their mouth and a blindfold over their eyes. Trick them into seeing your message even if they don't want to. Step 5, be happy. If you don't take joy in your creation, then you shouldn't be making it. Not for you or anyone else. So finally, after you've followed all these steps, the last thing you need to do is create. Create words, create stories, create paintings and planets and fulfillment and madness. Create weapons. Weapons against injustice, against oppression, against loss and defeat. In the words of Wojnarowicz, I let my hands become weapons. My teeth become weapons. Every bone and muscle and fiber and ounce of blood in my body become weapons, and I feel prepared for the rest of my life. As creator, make your creation a weapon and threaten the world with it. Make them cry about your work, make them laugh about it, make them say, well, that was definitely something, but I can't quite tell what. Drive them, confuse them, inspire them, leave them dead inside, I don't care. Do what you want, don't let them stop you. So, if you were to make something according to these guidelines specifically, what would your creation look like? Well, I don't really have the time, budget, or skill to make a feature-length movie, but I don't really have to. That's the beauty of this guide. It's open-ended. I don't know, though. I could be stupid. There's no real room for complex character dynamics, or multifaceted theme development, or deep philosophical theory. At the end of a narrow road, far away from a quaint village, Hevel painted portraits of his guests in a stone cottage. He was admired by most, loved by many, and worshipped by a few. He borrowed emotions and raw colors and trapped them on canvas, giving them away to the village folk for no price but a conversation. Wisdom flowed from his mouth and into the ears of the people, who were always eager to hear what he had to say next. To Hevel, life was complete. On a morning like any other, Hevel awoke in his bed, cleaned himself up, and prepared a simple breakfast of bread and milk. He propped open his window with a branch to let in the cool air and morning bird melodies, and sat on the floor across from his easel. When Hevel reached for the first brush to begin his work, he was surprised to notice that his passion was nowhere to be found. The coiled knot of artistic endeavor and lifelong joy of design had, without doubt, left his body. Hevel stood up and looked around, wondering if it had gotten lost on the way to the window. He checked under pillows, in drawers, on top of shelves, but still he could not find his passion. Finally, he opened his front door and called out into the dense wood, "Passion? Oh, passion, where have you gone? I miss you greatly." But the wood did not respond. Hevel hobbled out onto the narrow road and made his way down into the village, concerned but resolved. He knocked on the doors of all his friends' houses, all the people he had painted portraits of, and all those who had brought him food and water. They only smiled and shook their heads, saying, "No, Hevel, we haven't seen your passion. Have you checked the cave?" Hevel did not like the cave. Of all the places he visited around his cottage, he avoided the cave most of all. Its rocky entrance threatened his fragile bones with its sharp angles and crags. He held back a scowl and said to the villager, "That couldn't be. The cave is a dark and terrible place. Why would my passion want to go somewhere like that?" But inside he knew that he would have to check eventually. Hevel hiked back up the road and walked to the cave mouth, staring with quiet indignation at the one thing that had ever caused him strife. He took a deep breath and listened for the light singing which accompanied passion, and heard a slight tune coming from deep within the cavern. Hevel braced his tired legs and back, and took a step into the cave. He walked through the dark, resonant tunnels until he came across a ghostly vision. The tall, slim apparition stood in a dim alcove and beckoned for Hevel to come close. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Hevel asked the gangly specter.
"I am regret,"
it replied.
"I am what you lack, but what you see in the dark. I am what you hide from when you blow your candles out. I drink the paint that spills onto your cabin floor when you turn to look behind you."
Hevel shuddered in the midst of such a ghastly creature, but did not back away. "I have no regret. I've lived a beautiful life."
"You have lived in the splendor of art and wasted your youth honing a skill to capture nature. You regret the potential that was wasted years ago."
Hevel looked at his old and weathered hands, fingertips dyed in numerous colors from the decades of old, dried paint. His senses felt dulled, and his memory shook in attempts to recall what life was like long ago. I don't understand. I tried to enjoy the time I had. Regret looked at the poor old man and reached out a hand.
I will help lead you through the rest of your journey,
The ghost said.
With regret by your side, you will learn to savor what you can never have again.
Hevel took his hand and followed him deeper into the cave, emerging in a large open cavern. In the center of the room stood a great and terrible demon with deep red flesh and cruel twisted horns. Hevel saw the beast and his lips parted to speak, but he found his throat clamped tight.
I am fear,
The demon spoke. Hevel heard his words and could not help but laugh. The two spirits looked at him with confusion, wondering how he could find humor in the visage of death before him. I've never met you before, Mr. Fear. I must have gone my whole life without seeing your face, Hevel said.
Everyone has met me at some point. Maybe you've forgotten?
Responded the demon in kind. No, couldn't be. I'll be moving on without you if it's no trouble. But Fear would not let Hevel pass. Instead, he furrowed his brow, snapped his fingers, and a horrific vision appeared in the room. 4 open caskets lay in a row, with the faces of Hevel's closest friends staring at him from beyond the grave. Hevel shook where he stood and crumbled to the floor, hardly able to think. Why have you shown me this, Fear? Why do you torture me so? He coughed.
Because
The devil began, reaching out his hand.
you walk through life without meaning. You think your art can carry you through hardship because you have never felt fear. Without the allure of death, your life has no purpose.
Hevel's eyes watered, and he tasted the salt of his tears in his mouth. He reluctantly reached up and took the outstretched hand that the demon presented him, and walked into the next chamber of the cave, with regret and fear by his side. At the end of a dark, stony hallway, in the corner of a rough niche, Passion was curled up in a ball, softly singing to herself. Hevel was so excited that he let go of his companion's hands and rushed to pick up the pitiful Passion. Oh, Passion, why did you run from me? He asked. I've loved you so for all these years, but now you run? Passion softly whispered to him,
You have misused me, Hevel. I am a rare gift. I am an intricate cage to life, a tinted glass pane through which you see the world. I cannot bear to spend another minute with you, Hevel, knowing that you are held down by my beauty.
Hevel was reluctant to accept her words, so he looked to guidance from the 2 figures that had led him deeper into the cave. Regret and fear looked wistfully towards Hevel, longing to make the decision for him, knowing that only he could choose to leave or stay. He felt their gaze on his skin, and he shivered, understanding the task ahead of him. He stared into the bright void of rich essentia and thought of the world that awaited him outside of the cave. When his vision subsided, he felt the tug of reality pulling him to the surface. Hevel took the hands of the ghost and the demon and climbed up to the entrance of the cave. As he saw the sun glistening down in sharp shafts of light, he suddenly felt the sharp claws of the beast and the cold fingers of the ghost pulling him down. He yanked his arms back, and the 2 staggered behind him. Hevel looked to the spirits and saw their corrupt nature as vessels for pain and ignorance. He then looked to nature, without the blinds of passion covering its true appearance. He stood in the warmth and birdsong and breeze, and left his regret and fear in the cave with his passion. Hevel's first step out of the cave mouth was akin to a rebirth, his body awash with exhilaration. He looked to the deep sky through layers of tall pines, and saw a reflection of reverence pulsating in the ground on which he stood. And in the sky there was a UFO, and the door of the UFO opened and Jesus stepped out, and he was holding a TV remote, and he clicked the rewind button, and Satan burst out of the earth and ate Hevel in one bite, and suddenly all the oceans of the world flooded his cottage, and all his art was destroyed, and then the dead aliens on Jesus' UFO came back to life, and they started fighting him alongside Satan, and all that got the attention of the President of the United States, and so he sends nukes to kill Jesus because he wants the aliens on his side, but the nukes haven't been blessed by the Pope, so the President has to go to the Vatican to get the liquid fuel turned into holy water, but the Pope is secretly an alien too, so he can't actually bless the water, so the alien Pope and the President and Satan all go to the highest ranked cardinal, and he blesses the fuel and turns to holy water, and so he sends the nukes, but Jesus' army is as skeleton dinosaurs, and they block the nuke. So the alien pope and the president get into a mecha and start punching Jesus. So Jesus takes out his cell phone and calls God, and God comes down from heaven and starts beating the crap out of Satan. And the president calls all the other countries of the world, and they start sending their nukes to Hevel's cottage to kill God. But all this commotion attracted the space police, so they have to come and arrest the aliens and take them to space jail. But the president is now an accomplice, so he has to go to space jail too, and God is on the no-fly list now, so he can't go back to heaven. So Satan spits up hell to try to give them wisdom, but he's already digested now, so he can only scream and cry and flail around. So the alien pope and the president escape capture with a magic carpet, and they go and try to heal Hevel, but they need a special type of bandage that only Jesus has. So they go and apologize to Jesus and ask for him the bandages, but he's still mad, so he runs away to the moon. And by this time, the countries of the world have already sent their nukes to target Jesus, so they accidentally blow up the moon, and all the werewolves are mad, so they're on Jesus' side. And the world's having an alliance with the aliens, and the conflict tips off the vampires too, so they start fighting. But by this time, it's daytime, so they all start burning up. And by this time, Satan got hungry again, and he ate Hevel again, so he's out of the picture. So the alien pope needs to find another wise man to give them advice, so he digs up Einstein's grave, but he can only speak German, and the alien pope speaks English, so they need to find a translator. But Jesus built another Tower of Babel with Jenga blocks to play Jenga against God because they were bored waiting for the aliens and the vampires to launch their attack, so there's no translator available, which Einstein can speak a special math language. So he goes and talks to the president, who also speaks math, and they work together to figure out that Jesus is actually an alien too, and the space police kidnap the real Jesus. So they all need to go and rescue real Jesus and send him back and send God back to heaven. So they hitch a ride on a stealth bomber and fly into space with a mecha strapped to the back. And the vampires are really good hackers. They hijack the space police vehicle, and they release all the aliens, and Jesus is tied up in the back, so they cut the ropes and they put him in the mecha and program it to return him to heaven. But God is still on the no-fly list. So the vampires all have to turn into bats and fly him up to themselves. But now the werewolves have showed up and they don't know that Jesus is cool again, so they start eating the bats. And now the coronavirus, so the whole world Jesus resistance army starts dying, and the president doesn't want to enforce a mask mandate, so he just called up the alien pope and told him to brainwash the people and convince them that it's Satan's fault. So they all beat the crap out of Satan again and send him back to hell. But he's on his way down, he burps, and the burp has so much force that God is propelled back up to heaven. On his way up, he tries to fix the moon, but he bumps against it and it crashes into the earth. So there's fire everywhere, and everyone's screaming, and Jesus hears him, breaks out of the neck, and comes down to the alien ship, and does brainwashing, wiped everyone's memory. So Jesus clicks his rewind button, and the whole thing starts up again. The same series of events happens over and over again for the rest of time, and Hevel is always stupid and dead.